Hey guys, welcome back to Coffee and Questions. I'm so glad you can join us today as we continue just a discussion on questions that we might have about life and Christianity and the Bible and anything like that. And today, my thoughts were on the Big Bang. Actually, it was started last week as I was looking at research as we talked about physics. And the topic of the Big Bang came up. And there are some people who hold to the concept as Christians that the Big Bang is an accurate way of understanding how God chose to act in creation of this world. And so the question is, did God use the Big Bang to create the universe and everything and all that sort of stuff? And so just to give you, and again, I am not a scientist, I'm not a physicist, I am not an astrophysicist, I am a pastor. And so I've done some research on this stuff, but I am by no means an expert. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts and your opinions as we discuss these sort of things to see if I got something wrong or I missed something. Now, the Big Bang Theory, and we're not talking about the television show, obviously, but the Big Bang Theory is this concept, and it was actually proposed by, let me get this right, George Lemaitre. I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong, who was a Roman Catholic priest. He was the first one to really propose the concept that everything that exists in the universe, everything that we see, everything that's observable, everything that we can't see, the dark matter, the dark energy, all that sort of stuff, at one point in time was condensed into an infinitesimally small point. Right, and this came about because of a couple of reasons. You had Einstein's theory of relativity that came out in the early 1900s. Not long after that, Hubble himself was able to track and prove that the universe, as we see it, is expanding. And things are in general moving away from each other, and so the logic became, well, if that's the case, then if things are expanding, then we can back it up and say things were closer at some point in time. And so it was after that George Lemaitre proposed this concept of everything was condensed into one spot. In fact, this was a really hard pill for a lot of scientists to follow. Those who are atheistic and agnostic basically held to this concept that the universe had been constant and had always been there, and so eventually life was to be formed. And this idea that now science was showing that the universe, everything that we can see in this universe, had a starting point. Was a hard thing for them to swallow. In fact, so much so that Einstein added a cosmological constant into his equations that was proven wrong by Hubble. And there are many theories that were put out there to try to detract and stop the Big Bang from actually being a valid theory, and yet the Big Bang Theory withstood all of them. And still exist. In fact, so much so that astrophysicists like Dr. Robert Jastrow, who may, again, I'm probably mispronouncing his name, but Dr. Robert Jastrow is an astrophysicist who is an agnostic, at least originally was. I don't know what his views were when he died or anything like that. But he got his degree in the 40s. He actually was part of the beginning of NASA. He helped found a number of different things in NASA and such, and just a really well-known and very smart man. And he eventually wrote a book in 1978 called God and the Astronomers, and in which he says something along these lines: for the scientists who this is a quote from his book, God and the Astronomers, published in 1978. For the scientist who has lived by his faith in the power of reason, the story ends like a bad dream. He has scaled the mountains of ignorance. He is about to conquer the highest peak. As he pulls himself over the final rock, he is greeted by a band of theologians who have been sitting there for centuries. He is saying this idea that science indicates that the universe had a beginning, and his view was that because of the Big Bang, there would be no way to know for sure what caused it and what the beginning, from the scientific view, why the universe, why the Big Bang happened, and who caused it, and what was the start, and what was the reason behind it, and what was the mover of that Big Bang. There are some problems with the Big Bang Theory. For example, the time frame. The Big Bang Theory would argue that the universe is 13.7 billion years old. Now, how does that fit into the Bible? As an evangelical Christian who believes that the Bible is the Word of God, it is true, it is inspired, and that every word of it is accurate, I have a hard time putting 13.7 billion years into the timeline of the creation of the world. And when you look at the 6 days of creation that we have in Genesis chapter 1, some of the things seem to be happening out of sequence. Out of order. For example, you've got the creation of the world, you've got the creation of light and day. In day one, the waters are separated. You've got plants that are growing, and then it's like day 4. God says, oh, well, let's put lights in the sky, and he forms the sun and the moon and the stars. And so this is 4 days after the world has already been created. It's already been, and so I have a hard time fitting that all together into that. And so there are many that you go to the answers in Genesis and you look around and say, the Big Bang Theory is not the final answer in the question. What the Big Bang Theory does do is admit that there's a good possibility that the universe has a beginning point. And that's what the Bible also says. What we do know is that the Bible is very clear that at one point in time there was no universe, there was simply God, and at the next point God moved and he spoke and he created the universe. How God used his creative powers to form the universe and the earth and all of that in 6 days, I can't say. I'm not God. I wasn't there. I didn't watch him do it. What we know is that he did do it. He did create the world in 6 literal days according to the Bible. And so I think that the Big Bang Theory, although it does point possibly to the origin of the universe, does not accurately describe the creation of the world based upon what we see in the Bible. So those are my thoughts and what I understand about the Big Bang from the Bible's perspective, and I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. I'd love to hear any questions that you might have, and I look forward to continuing our conversation. Thanks, guys.